Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That is Matthew 11:28. Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast. I am Sandra Flach with a different background behind me today because I actually am squirreled away at the Inlet Community Church way up in the Adirondacks in this little community called Inlet. And I was working remotely this week from our camp in the Adirondacks. If you follow my social media, you see pictures of all of the beautiful, great outdoors of God's creation there. And of course, 30 minutes before I was to record this podcast with my guest, the power and the internet went down. And we have no cell service at our place. We're that remote off the grid. So I had to fly to town and came to the church that we attend when we're up here. And thankfully, they have internet, but they are running generator power. I don't know if you can hear a little humming in the background, but outside the window behind me, there's a generator running, but they have internet. So I didn't have to cancel and reschedule. I have 2 podcasts to record today. So it's been a whirlwind, but you know what? God is faithful. He worked out all of the details. So we are here to record. So that's how my morning is going. I was literally sitting with the Lord in my quiet time. And all of a sudden I heard our generator kick on, which gave us power at our camp, but it did not give us the internet. So I don't really know what's going on, but anyway, we have to just roll with it. So I hope you're having a great day. I'm recording this podcast actually right around Labor Day. And we're, ending summer and about to transition into the school year. So just trying to adjust to those changes and interesting, right? With our kids, all these different transitions. And actually my son, Slava, was with me when the power went out and I had to pivot and make all these other plans. And I had to self-regulate because if I don't self-regulate, he's way off the charts. So self-regulated, prayed together and, explained to him that, I have plans A, B, and C. And in worst case scenario, I find some cell service and email my guests and reschedule, right? But it all worked out. And here we are. The gracious folks from Inlet Community Church are allowing me to sit in the pastor's office at the pastor's desk and record this podcast. So let's see how it goes, right? Before we get started with our guest today, I do want to share some of our resources for parents caring for children who were prenatally exposed to alcohol and other drugs. So check this out.
Natalie Vecchione of the FASD Hope podcast and Sandra Flach of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast would like to invite you to join their Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with an FASD, diagnosed or not. This faith-based community includes an online bi-monthly support group, a monthly VIP conversation, and a private Facebook group which includes a video devotional from Natalie and Sandra every Saturday. To register, visit justicefororphans.ny.org/training/FASD.
I just love our Hope for the FASD Journey community. I get such a great encouragement from our whole team and everybody who's part of our community. So I hope that you'll check that out. In addition to our support group, our online support group, I do offer training for parents and caregivers and even professionals who are working with children who were prenatally exposed. You may or may not know if your child has an FASD. You may or may not have a diagnosis. You may suspect, or you may be just dealing with these really big behaviors, and you've been addressing the trauma and you've been addressing attachment, but there's still something missing. There's still something going on. And it very likely could be the impact of prenatal exposure to alcohol. So starting on October 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I am kicking off a deep dive into FASD using the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. This is a brain-based approach to parenting. This is a 6-week workshop. So it's 6 consecutive Wednesday nights, 6 consecutive Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. starting on October 11th. And it's 18 hours worth of content, right? 3 hours at a time, 6 sessions. I hope you will check it out. So you can register at our website, justicefororphans.ny.org. Or maybe you're interested in something more one-on-one, like a coaching type consulting session, or a bundle of sessions. We are now offering that more personalized support with me as your coach. You can find out more about that on our website as well. We do offer certificates of completion for all of the training and sessions that you would do with me. And if you are a licensed social worker in New York State, we offer CEUs as well. So again, to check out all of our training options, go to justicefororphans.ny.org, and you can find out more there. And of course, we have a link in the show notes to that. And please also be sure to share with your friends about this podcast. Follow us on social media, subscribe, follow the podcast. We are now offering these episodes in video form, which is new for us. We started that in September. So I hope that you will check all of that out. And now I can't wait to get to our guest today. So are you ready? Mindi Schrock is a mom of 4, 2 through international adoption with special needs. She's a writer, creator, encourager who walks with Jesus. Mindi's mission is to encourage and empower moms with empathy, humor, and permission to rest. Boy, do we need that. Please welcome Mindi Schrock. Hi, Mindi.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing good. We just had, again, I shared in my opening with our listeners about the crazy morning I've had, and then it just continued because we had all kinds of trouble connecting,
Yes.
but it all worked out, and here we are, and we're gonna roll with it, and trust that the Lord is gonna work it all out. So
Yes.
I thank
Absolutely.
you for being on today. I've been following your social media and so encouraged by it, and couldn't wait to connect with you and have a conversation with you and introduce our listeners to you. So let's jump in, because you have
Okay.
four kiddos, right? 2 bios, 2
Yes.
adopted
Yes.
internationally. So what led you to adopt?
Well, I had this plan in mind that I would just keep having kiddos every 2 years. And of course, God had other plans. And so we had 2 boys, and the first 2, well, both were kind of difficult pregnancies, difficult birth, sometimes even difficult in postpartum. But around a year old, I would go to my husband and say, "So, we're going to have another one?" So for number 2, it was like, okay. And then when it came time for number 3, he just said, it's been kind of rough. Maybe we've had enough Schrocks, and maybe it's time to adopt a Schrock. And I was never one of those that thought, oh, I always wanted to adopt. That was never even on my radar. So I started praying that God would change my husband's heart. And so we had lots of conversation about that, and probably over a 3 to 6 month period. And I was just praying and praying that God would change his heart. And then one time we were out for dinner And the subject came up again. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's adopt. And my husband was shocked. Brad was just, what happened? And I said to him, I think God just needed to change my heart. So we started the process of adopting, and how much do you want to hear about that?
Yeah. So I know because you had shared with me that the process to adopt was crazy, right? You had a lot of challenges. So tell us about the journey of international adoption and how that played out.
Sure. Well, in my experience, there's nothing easy about adoption. So the paperwork is difficult, the requirements, getting things in, and the lengths that we had to go, the places we had to drive to, the paperwork we had to get. It took us 7.5 years to adopt. We had 2 adoptions fall through. We tried 2 different countries before we settled on, God really told us to adopt through China. So, and that was another, I never, China was not on my radar. We looked at 2 other countries before that, and long process in between. We moved in that time as well. We lost quite a bit of money in one of the adoptions. So when our second one fell through, our adoption agency director said, "Why don't you try China?" And I said, "Oh, well," and I went to the Lord with it. And I just said, "God, this is just, I just don't have a heart for China." And I felt like God said, "But I do." So we started that process. And by then we were 5.5 years in, and we realized, by this time we probably could have adopted 2. So why not adopt 2 at the same time? So we kind of set our hearts on, we really felt like God had twins for us. So we just kind of waited. We had all of our paperwork done, and we were just waiting to look at files. And we just felt like there were twins for us. And the adoption director said, "We're believers too, and we're praying with you, but we do need to tell you that that's very unlikely with China. And often if someone has twins, they don't get, they're able to keep them without the restrictions with the one-child policy because they're twins. So it's very rare to find twins to adopt." So after a period of time, we felt like that something kind of shifted, or how we understood it, that it wasn't twins exactly like how we thought of. Often God's ways and his thoughts are different than ours. So we started looking at files for girls, and we had 2 biological boys. So we definitely wanted 2 girls. And our director noticed that we had looked at a couple files. And so she reached out to us and said, "I saw you're looking at files. Are you open to seeing some of what I have?" And I said, "Well, sure. Yeah, let's take a look at it." And she said, "Well, we have this girl." And she mentioned some of the medical needs, which we were open to. And she said the birth date, which was I think that one was October. And we said, okay. And then she said, what orphanage, what town? And then she said, and then I have this other little girl that she's November. And oh my, it's the same town, the same orphanage. Mindi, you have your twins. And we knew from that moment that those 2 were for us. Of course, we did the responsible thing and still had our doctor look over their files because both of them had significant medical needs. And we found out more after they came home, but we knew that these were the 2 girls, the twins for us, not biologically related, but God's twins for us. So that was in January. And then, in 2017, in August, we brought Natalie and Brielle home to our family.
Wow. And how old were they when they came home?
They were 3.5. So both of their birthdays are in the fall. So they were almost 4 when we adopted them. Yeah.
Wow. And only a month apart. So that's a lot like twins.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually like 2.5 weeks. So it's pretty amazing. And people ask all the time because they're about the same size. Are they twins? Are they twins? So they know the deal because, those little ones are listening when you, when people ask questions and how you answer them. So yes. Yeah. They're God's twins for us.
Yeah. So tell us about, would you share with us what were the disabilities, the special needs that both of the girls have?
Yes. Well, Brielle has a genetic condition. So that affects a lot of different things, some developmental delays. She also had a hole in her heart. So she needed it repaired almost immediately. And she should have had it. I mean, it's really a miracle that she was still with us. And that should have been fixed in utero or soon after birth. She also is partially deaf. She has a submucous cleft palate, so a significant articulation delay. And the only thing that we really knew from her file was a heart condition. But our doctors kind of prepared us that that type of heart condition is pretty typical for the genetic disorder that she has, and then the additional things that we might need to work with. And then Natalie has a lot of digestive issues, so some chronic ongoing things that she'll always need care for, and it affects her daily life. So we kind of anticipated having one that would have some major chronic things to begin with, and then one that we would have to kind of keep addressing and taking care of throughout her life. But we kind of looked at it as, this is something that she'll always have to deal with. So maybe we can help her with that. So, yeah.
So I know that, children with special needs or disabilities, that brings another whole level of, medical challenges and things to our parenting journey. And typically children coming through foster care or through adoption have trauma and loss, and typically have a whole host of big behaviors because of that trauma. So in addition to the medical things that you were dealing with, were there attachment and trauma behaviors that you were experiencing?
Yes. Yeah. And we found that we tried to take sort of a systematic approach. I like systems and organization, which kind of flies out the window when you adopt and when you follow God, because everything's an adventure. But what we tried to do is approach, take it pieces at a time, because you can't solve everything and you can't fix everything all at once. And we knew those issues were there and were going to be there. So we started with, for lack of a better word, life-threatening things first. So Brielle's heart surgery, immediate need. So we started with that. And then we moved into, so we had to kind of address medical first, even though we were doing all we could to bond and attach and be very intentional about that. But the reality is it's really tough to do when you're also relying on medical professionals they don't know, not always trauma informed. But we try to be really intentional about just bonding with them. So we started with life-threatening and then quality of life. So Natalie had a surgery not quite a year home. And what we did is try to really focus on bonding with her before that, because it was a very traumatic surgery in itself, even though it greatly increased her quality of life. But we addressed all of the medical things first and all the extra supports, like for Brielle, never having hearing aids. So she got her first hearing aids at age 4.5, and working with speech. And Natalie says that Brielle didn't really talk before she came home, that she was in the orphanage. She was too angry and didn't really speak. So teaching someone how to talk at age 4. So we kind of went through the medical quality of life. And then within the past, they've been home 5 years. Yes, 5 years. And so the first few years were really just medical quality of life. And then, about a year ago, we really started to dig into trauma therapy. And we've done some really extensive work, starting with us as a family and as parents. Because how can you lead someone to healing if you're not healed? So we've been working through a lot of trauma therapy, and some things have helped and some things haven't. And it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of prayer. And it's definitely a journey. And but we see trauma every day. So and we try to approach it as it's us against the trauma. So it's the girls and I. It's our family against the trauma. So
yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. How old are the girls now, and how are they doing?
They are both 9, almost 10. And they're doing really well. Both are in school. We just moved Natalie to a Christian school. They were both in public before that. They both have IEPs that help support them at school. I could go into a lot of detail about advocating for IEPs, but we won't go there. But their health, I would say, is at a good baseline right now. We still get treatment about every 3 to 6 months, but we've gone our longest period without. We travel across state lines to a children's hospital that has specialists for their rare conditions. So we go to Ohio actually to get their treatment every 3 months since they've been home. And this is the longest stretch we've gone without. So it's been nice to get a little break from that. There's still lots of trauma. That's an ongoing thing with attunement and attachment and connecting and bonding with them. In school, Natalie is really thriving. A lot of her teachers would say they don't see it. They don't. She seems like a happy, successful child. And Brielle, she's working with. She has quite the extensive IEP and gets a lot of support. And she's doing well, making friends. So overall, they're doing really well. But of course, there's always lots of challenges that we face with them.
Yeah, it's an ongoing journey, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now you mentioned IEPs and not going there, but I'm sure our listeners were thinking, "Wait, let's go there." I need a pep talk on IEPs. So what advice would you give to our listeners who are also adoptive and foster parents when it comes to IEPs? What can parents do? What would be your advice?
Know that you're going to have to be an advocate. And it's a balance of working with the school, but also sometimes just needing to dig in and fight for your child. There's often local support that you can reach out to, that representatives will come to IEP meetings, which I would suggest that if you feel like your child isn't getting what they need. And as much as we love our district and have loved our teachers, the school is not going to recommend necessarily what your child needs. You're going to have to do your own research. We have a private speech teacher as well. So she's been a major support in helping us know what to even ask for, because that's what I've struggled with the most as a parent. And my degree is in education. So I should know some of this. And but with her, with her needs, I didn't necessarily know even what to ask for. And that was the hard part. And unfortunately, it has to do with funding, and you can't always count on the school saying, well, this is what she really needs. As the parent, you have to be the one that does the research, maybe finds some support, which can be challenging, but there's often resources in every state that you can, parent groups that you can find. But knowing what to ask for, that's kind of the research that's involved, and then advocating for that, asking for that. Yeah. And sometimes I can't be the laid back Midwestern girl. I have to just really advocate for what she needs. Yeah. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. I remember someone once in a Bible study telling me that there's a scripture verse that says to be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. And I've applied that over the years with working with our school district, even back as far as before we adopted our kids and we were homeschooling. I just worked to build a positive relationship with our school district, never knowing that I would ever be at a place where I would have kids with, special needs that needed to be in certain programs within the school. But because I built that relationship with them over the years, we get, my son, who was adopted, and he's high school age, and our listeners who listen all the time know he was prenatally exposed to alcohol. So he has fetal alcohol syndrome. And he had services through the school while we were still homeschooling. Then we put him in school for a few years, and then COVID happened, and that was disastrous. And then we homeschooled him again. And then, now he's sort of doing this hybrid of I do math and reading with him in the morning, and then he goes into school for like adaptive PE and then life skills and job skills. But I am keenly aware that whole thing that we have going on is really that would vary by school district, not to mention state, right? So you have to, we as parents and caregivers need to know our kids best. Like, we're the experts on our kids, and we have to become the expert on whatever condition they have. Because I remember I think my son was in 7th grade, and it was new special ed teacher that he had that year. We hadn't had any problems for 5th and 6th grade. The teachers were both actually adoptive moms that he had for 5th grade and in 6th grade. So it was like, there was this level of understanding there. But in 7th grade, a new teacher, and I remember the first parent teacher conference, she said something like, yes, your son has a problem with impulse control. And I'm like, you think? Because that's a primary symptom of fetal alcohol syndrome. And that's when I was like, okay, ding, ding, ding. I have to educate every educator about FAS because they don't know. Even if they're a special education teacher, it doesn't mean that they know about the, whatever disability our kiddos have. So we have to be the experts, but then we also have to gently, approach, because we don't want to come across a certain way where they just don't listen to what we're saying either. So we do have to fiercely advocate. And I love that, getting a support person who can go into those meetings with you, who knows what to ask for. I think that's wisdom right there. So thank you, Mindi, for going into that with us. Pivot a little bit here. Parenting children with trauma histories and, very daunting, not to mention if they have disabilities, medical appointments, therapies, all of the things that we're doing. How do you take care of yourself? What do you do for self-care?
I love that question. And that is something that the first few years, I just felt like we're a blur. And we kind of went from emergency to emergency. And I found that I was actually more calm in an emergency. And when everything was fine, that's when I was kind of freaking out, like looking for, which is typical of experiencing kind of secondary trauma. So, how do I take care of myself? I think along the way, I sort of had this idea of, the best mom homeschools her kids, and ideally, that's probably what my kids need. And I realized just that that's just a choice at this point I can't make. And just making a lot of choices like that, knowing they have a lot of needs. I can't solve all of them. I can't fix everything. And it's okay, telling myself it's okay to put them in school. And it's okay sometimes to let dad put them to bed each night, because then I have time to sip and have my evening coffee. And what I've been doing a lot lately is taking walks with Jesus. So that has been very therapeutic for me. When I sit and try to listen to Jesus and just sit, I can't do that very well. And all the thoughts are going. So if I'm moving, which, research would back that up as well, but I found that to be very therapeutic for me. So I do a lot of essential oils. I walk a lot, drink a lot of water. And I also strive not to be the perfect parent, that it's okay sometimes to say, you know what, public school is great. We're going to make that work. And I'll bond. It'll be quality versus quantity. So making a lot of little choices like that has significantly helped support also my mental health, because if I'm struggling, that affects the whole atmosphere of the home, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. So I have to stay emotionally healthy for me, and so that I can help take care of them as well. So
yeah, for sure. And I find when it comes to education, it varies by our kids, right? We have to do whatever is going to be best for them and what they need. And sometimes it is public school or Christian school or homeschool or a variety, and it may vary even year by year, right? So
absolutely,
I mean, in the early days of my parenting, when I just had biological kids, I was a firm believer that homeschooling was the best, superior way. And then I was humbled and adopted a bunch of kids and realized, okay, so that's not going to fly for everybody, right? Yeah. And then, some of our kids went to school, and then when that didn't work, I had to pull one home. And so it's really what's going to work best for our kiddos, for our family.
So true.
I don't believe there's any one right way. It's just whatever is going to work best for our kids. Right?
And we see that in our bio kids as well. And we've done everything from public school, Christian school, online, homeschool, co-ops. And it's truly, each kid has had a different educational journey. And, I have an education degree. So I sort of thought, well, we just put everyone in public school. And if it doesn't work, we'll put everyone in Christian school. And that has not been what's best for each of our kids. Different needs, different approaches. And it's true.
Yeah, for sure. So you chose the verse that I opened with, Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Yes. What does that verse mean to you?
That's been what God is speaking over me. I'm a fixer. I want to solve things. I want to take care of it. And adopting, if nothing else, has taught me I can't fix everything. I can't save anything. And I'm not supposed to. That expression, God doesn't give us more than what we can handle, is not true. Right. In fact, he doesn't say that, but he does say that he'll never leave us or forsake us. So for me, that verse has been a constant invitation to come spend time with me, that Jesus is saying to me, come spend time with me, because I tend to just do, get everything done that we need to do. And then if I have time, then I'll spend a few moments in a break, or spending time with just journaling or relaxing. And so that's an invitation and a reminder. And I don't know that I've ultimately learned that, but it's a gift. It used to feel like that's one more thing I have to do. But I'm finding, I need that. And it's been truly a gift to spend time just in the quiet, often walking, but in the quiet, just listening. Yeah.
I love that, because my long-standing time with the Lord is always first thing in the morning, before anybody else is up, and I can have that quiet time. But I love the walking with Jesus that you described, because I do love to walk, but I always think I have to sit in my space with my cup of coffee and my journal and my Bible, and it doesn't count unless I'm doing that. But
Right.
there are distractions that have to be filtered out when you're doing that. My cell phone may ding, an email comes through, and then I'm distracted. This morning I was sitting and it was like, oh, look at that beautiful sunrise. I should take a picture of that. And then I need to post that on social media. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I was like,
Yes.
I left Jesus in the living room, but I love the idea of walking, because then you're just walking and listening for the Lord and praying. So wherever and however finding rest works for each one of us, right? We have to find what that fit is. But I think that peace that comes with just that time with him is so key. And one of my favorite verses actually is from John chapter 15, where Jesus talks about abide in me, or remain is another translation, uses the word remain in me and I will remain in you. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So I always think I can't do anything apart from him anyway. I need to have this time where I'm abiding and remaining and being intentional of having some time with him. So, and that's where we do find our rest and peace in him. So I love that. I also love how you use social media to encourage moms. What inspired you to start doing that?
Well, I've struggled. I've struggled myself, and I've reached out to adoptive moms that I know personally face to face, and there's a lot of discouragement out there. And when I started sharing just on Facebook how hard things were, I had a lot of people that came to me and said, I struggle with that too, but I would have never known. I just thought, well, they look like they have it all together. And some didn't even, comment or anything, but they would just come to me personally or privately and say, I struggle with this too. And there's some discouragement out there, I think, with other adoptive moms, because it is so hard. And if we're not talking about it, we're all just kind of suffering in silence. And I have done that probably more than most, and thinking, I am just out here all by myself, just on my own island, struggling. And it's not okay to share that it's hard. And so I just felt like, man, if I'm struggling, maybe there's other moms out there too that are struggling. And if I can encourage them, man, that's what I want to do. So that's become my mission and my passion, to encourage and help other moms. First of all, to just be like, it's okay to say it's hard. It is. And then, okay, what can we do? How can we make this better? We don't want to just sit in, like I always say, it's okay to not be okay. But let's not stay there. Let's not wallow, because that's not helping. To be able to help other moms that maybe it's even hard to admit how much they're struggling. Because
I find I was when our kids, because at one point we adopted 3 kids internationally, 3 siblings at one time. So they all came home, and life, like you said, was like a blur, and I just remember making a lot of food all the time and running to a lot of doctors and dentist appointments, until things kind of settled down. But, it was hard, but I always was like, oh, I can't say it's hard, because people will say, well, you wanted to adopt these kids. This was all your idea. What, so that little, and that's not helpful, because that's not what the Lord would, that's not the Lord saying that to us. And we need each other. We were created to be in community. And I find that we can end up isolating ourselves, because it is hard. And not every parent, all of our parenting journeys are different. But if you're parenting children that you've adopted, or through foster care, or you're even a kinship placement, where kids have loss and trauma, and then, sometimes even special needs on top of that, it's a completely different journey than when we were parenting just biological children, right? Completely different. And so we can't take parenting advice from our best friend who's never adopted or doesn't have any idea what trauma,
my kid does that too.
Yeah. Or just spank them. They need a little more discipline, right? Not helpful, right? You don't understand trauma. That's not helpful. So we need to find our community, right? We need to find our some people say, find your tribe, right? We need to find our people. And it's not always easy to do, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the great features of being able to be online, and we started realizing this during COVID when people were able to connect more so that way. A year ago, myself and another adopted mom of a kiddo who has fetal alcohol syndrome, we started a support group for other parents like us on this journey, because, you know, we've got the trauma, we've got also prenatal exposure. So all of our kids have, you know, they're neurodivergent, and it's hard, but we need each other. And that's where we can find the hope and the encouragement. So I love what you're doing online to encourage moms. So where can our listeners find you on social media so they can catch your encouragement?
Yeah, well, I'm on Instagram. So Mindi, Mindi.Schrock, Schrock, or on Facebook. And there it's Mindi Roland Schrock. So come find me, come friend me. I would love to walk with you.
Yeah. And we will put links to your social media in the show notes so that our listeners can easily find you. I've been following you on Instagram for quite some time, and then just found you on, like, I don't know why I didn't do it. I mean, let me find her on Facebook too, so I can catch it on both platforms. And so I hope our listeners will check that out. We all need encouragement. You know, most of our listeners are adoptive and foster parents, especially moms, right? And, you know, as we wrap up our conversation today, Mindi, would you share a word of encouragement with us?
Yeah, I would say you are not alone. There may be thoughts that are rolling around in your brain that you don't want to be thinking, but you are. And I would say I've been there, and you are not alone. And it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to rest. In fact, some of that verse that I just repeat over and over to myself, it's permission to rest. You need it. You deserve it. And I promise it's going to be okay. There's going to be hard things, but it's okay to rest, and you are not alone.
Such good advice. Great encouragement. Thank you, Mindi, so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your story, for all that you're doing with your own children, as well as encouraging fellow parents along the way. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks. So thank you for joining us today for the adoption and foster care journey as well. I hope you were inspired by Mindi Schrock's story and encouraged by her words. I hope you'll find her on social media. We will put the links to her social media in the show notes for this episode, so you can easily find them. And in addition to encouraging you, we love to equip you for your unique parenting journey, especially if you're parenting children who are prenatally exposed. We have lots of resources on our website, from coaching to our FASD workshops, and lots of other resources that you can find there. And of course, this podcast is a resource as well. So I hope you go to the website, check it out, justicefororphansny.org. And again, follow us on social media at Justice for Orphans. You can also follow me, Sandra Flach, on Facebook and Instagram as well. And I'm grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm grateful to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.